What's really interesting about what's hot is it's the same things that are hot in all the different countries. So the similarities are much greater than the differences. Certainly for the companies that are doing really well, they're extremely strong at all their brilliant basics. They're strong at some of the new technologies and so forth. But you see the differences perhaps in the mass of the market rather than the leaders. So whereas, for example, you look at a topic like people engagement and the amount of time that people spend really not looking after is the wrong word, but really paying attention to how people feel about work and how they feel about what they're doing day to day, because that passes on to customers, that is quite different, I find. So if I'm looking at a typical CCO forum group in the UK, that's a big topic of conversation every time. If I go to the US meeting and look at what's going on, then I can think of a couple of the guys there really strongly focused on that kind of stuff, but it's not their big thing. So it's interesting, what's the mass of the customer experience market doing rather than just what the peak is doing in that sense. But in the UK, if we took the UK market, certainly the people engagement side is very strong. That's something which has come along, not new, but I think the difference is that the senior directors in business are now of an age that they've experienced the difference. And also there's a bravery now that's there that wasn't there before. They are prepared to say, this is not good enough. And that's very difficult when you're a listed business and the analysts are saying, show me the numbers, show me the numbers, show me the numbers. All they want is increased profitability, increased market share. They're not saying, show me the numbers about your people engagement. So the head guys in the corporate environment have got to be brave and say, no, this is a fundamental long-term investment in our talent, in our people, in our capability. And ultimately, the stock market sort of understands that. It doesn't really want to measure it. It doesn't want to say that that's the right thing to do. But if you don't, you end up with this problem of squeezing the life out of your business over the short term. People talk about the long-term profitability rather than the short term. So you take someone like Tesco, which for 15 years was doing really, really well. Now people are looking back and saying, well, was it doing that well? That when somebody took the lid off it, the pressure comes out of the system and it's not perceived to be doing as well as it might otherwise have done. But this is the difference between long-term measurement and short-term measurement. All stock markets short-term measure, quarterly results. Founder-led businesses run on the long term. They run on the belief of the people there. What's really exciting to me is the number of UK clients who are getting brave. They're going, this is not good enough. This is not okay for the customers. We shouldn't do that. And they're becoming much braver about the initiatives that they take and the way that they speak up for customers, because that has become accepted in today.
So on those initiatives that you're talking about of being braver, does that translate to changes in channels and multimedia?
I think it's more day to day. I think it's, when you're sat in a meeting and you're twiddling your thumbs and going, oh my God, are they really going to do that? It's the ability then to speak up and spit and say what you think about it rather than sitting quietly. There's a saying which is, a question I could ask you, which, what is the opposite of honesty? It's not lying, it's silence. And that's what happens in most corporates. People stay quiet about stuff, and you have to speak out, because otherwise this, all this dumb stuff carries on happening unless people stand up and speak about what they want. And the really interesting myth is that when people are in the middle of the organisation, they think they get into trouble by standing up. The guys at the top are going, what a hero, come on, bring it on, because they're sat in the same mud. They really want and they do believe in this stuff. It's not about having to convince senior board directors that dealing with customers is important. They absolutely know that. They're sick of people coming to them saying, and another thing you need to do. Actually, what they want is they want their people to stand up and do something about it. They want that bravery and initiative that's so important. Generally, the customer is pulling organisations into the new channels. So whether you have a social media strategy or not, customers are using social media. So they're talking about whether you like it or not. So consequently, people pick up on reputation as an early stage. They start monitoring stuff. They start reading and learning a lot more. And of course, when that information comes back into the organisation, it can start as a bit of a kind of a CEO's panic. It's kind of, we can't afford this to happen. Our reputation with the shareholders is important, or this story shouldn't go in the press, or You know, they try and think about that kind of stuff in the early stages, but today I think most organisations are beyond that. They're much more mature in their thinking, and they've had to say, you know, the question is not so much do we deal with social media, it's how do we get the different silos of our organisations to work together to address the problems that are there. Because the dumb stuff that comes out isn't done on purpose. It's not done by accident either. It's by design that the organisation has marketing sends this out, you know, whilst service tries to sort that out. So the classic example I was quoting earlier on, British Gas launched their new hashtag for social on the same day as they launched a 10% pay increase. Sorry, not pay increase, fee increase, charges increase. Quite interesting now in the UK just how many organisations have got themselves organised around multi-channel operations and being able to cope with those different channels. And importantly, not just to do the transactions, what happens with these new channels, the technology brings a lot of capability for the management information. So it's absolutely imperative to get yourself into these new technology platforms, because those are the ones that give you the analytics capability, they give you the kind of ability to understand what's going on across a mass of customers, and particularly to focus what I call decision flow. Who needs what information about customers and the business to make what decisions when? That has to be designed. In most organisations, it's undesigned, it's accidental, the way that it happens. In a modern organisation that's got so much data, you have to think much harder and be much slicker about using that information and get faster and faster. Because, you know, the Amazons of this world are extremely quick. They're running in days and hours, where most organisations are running, you know, months and quarters and that kind of thing. So, I mean, that you know, go back to what difference this is making. The customer pressure is pulling all this through, but the technology platforms that are coming in are allowing people with capability again. The people who can win the best people are the ones who are going to win these kind of battles, because they will have the sharpest analysts to use these sharp tools that are there. They are blunt instruments without the capability of the people who use them. What we see is that the capability of the technology of outsourcers has got to be good. Whether that's the integration with the client technology, but in particular the platform technologies they use, they have to be good these days. And it is one of the reasons why, if you're a corporate with a slow-moving, heavy IT function, it's a very good reason for moving, because actually you get those platforms with the outsourced service, potentially, depending on what you pay and who you go with, etc., etc. So that's quite interesting. Does that affect the onshore, offshore? I don't think it does necessarily. But again, if you go back to this battle for talent, what's quite interesting, you know, India is certainly not the destination to put your offshore voice anymore. But if you want data analysts, it's a great place to go. So you start looking at some of the services that the BPO suppliers over there are offering, and they're offering extremely advanced services around analytics, around some of the vertical process operations, so on and so forth. So I think offshore, it's got this sort of myth of being a bad thing, but actually if you look anywhere around the world and say, where will I go to get the best, smartest analysts, you're looking at India and China, because they have got some fantastic education. They've got obviously huge volumes of people coming out of college with great brains. They're not backwards in any way, shape or form. The average consumer in the UK sees an Indian call centre as a bad thing. They think of it as, I can't understand, you know, it's poor service. But actually, it's a myth. That what they're seeing there is a poor relationship between the outsourcer and the client. That doesn't mean to say that India is full of people who can't do those jobs exceptionally well. And the same way, you know, wherever you go in the world, the emerging countries, in many ways, to me, I always find it really shocking, is the conversations you have with people who think that India and China are going to be the future. Actually, India and China are already the future. You've only got to land at Delhi Airport to see A, how new it is. There's a 6-lane highway with flashing cat's eyes going down the road. You know, it's like way ahead of, you know, you land at Heathrow. It's the third world if you land at Heathrow. It really is. Go through Dubai Airport, go through Changi, Singapore. You land at, you know, dare I say Melbourne, you know, you're back in London. We are already living a myth, which is that the third world is developing. The third world developed. And we have to open our eyes and think about what talents have they got that we can really bring. And when you go to technology and analytics and big data, this is the stuff that it's all made of. You know, well, the hot things, I think there's a mixture. There is this shiny new things, I'd call them. So what are people playing with, what's at the leading edge, etc. Some of the things we've touched on. But certainly the ability to analyse and use data is very much at the heart of many of the new things that are going on in the shiny new objects area. The really important thing though is what we call brilliant basics. Is actually the organisations that are exceptional at customer experience, they focus on the basics of their business. So they really understand their customers, what they want, they really understand their people and what they want, they really understand the nitty-gritty of the processes that take place. And they understand that at quite high levels in the organisation. They're not detached, there isn't a middle manager who is detached from what happens to a customer. And there's a very, very good alignment behind the strategies that they have. So they have a really good understanding of what the strategy is, and people right down the organisation have a good understanding of how to help that strategy. And those strategies generally involve customers. I mean, it's pretty hard to have a strategy that doesn't involve customers. But the direction of travel, are we really focused on being the best technology, no people involved, or are we involved in just operating extremely well at the interpersonal level? There are so many angles to the way in which customer experience can play a part in the business strategy, and so it's really important to me is that if you understand your own strategy, you understand your own brilliant basics, and you really focus on getting that right through your people, those are the companies that are doing exceptionally well on customer experience.